Welcome, everybody. My name is Jason Hogstead, and I'm a staff member with the Louisville Historical Museum. Today, we are going to talk about the relationship between the historical sources we have and the stories we tell about the past here in Louisville. To do that, we're going to look at a difficult period in Louisville's history, the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s. Before we begin, I wanted to explain that this video is more than an attempt to bring to light a difficult part of Louisville's history, although it is in part that. It is also a chance to have a conversation about the relationship between the historical sources we have and the stories that we tell about the past here in Louisville. The museum has put together this brief video using the primary sources we have available to try and piece together what life was like for Louisville residents while the Klan was active in the mid-1920s. What we know about the KKK in Louisville comes primarily from two sets of sources: oral histories from the 1970s of residents recalling the rise of the Klan, and regional newspapers chronicling the Klan's power and the terror it spread in the region. Knowing what life was like in Louisville during the period when the Klan was active is difficult. We don't have any firsthand accounts from the time. Our oral histories were recorded 5 decades after the events in question, and there are few surviving Louisville Times editions from the time the Klan was active. That doesn't mean that we can't get an idea of what life under Klan influence was like, but it does mean that there will be things we may never know. The limitation of our sources also means that, quite frustratingly, we have more surviving sources that endorsed the Klan's views than those that give voice to its victims. For example, we have nearly the full run of the Rocky Mountain American, the official Klan newspaper from Boulder, and yet the museum sources don't include the experiences of Latino or African American families living in or around Louisville at the time. That disparity of representation in sources is problematic, and we hope you keep in mind the ways this uneven perspective limits what we know about Louisville at this time. But this is what we can piece together from the sources we have. In the 1920s, membership in the second KKK surged outside the South, in part because the new Klan incorporated anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant, and anti-socialist sentiments into its platform. Oregon, Indiana, and even Colorado were hotbeds of Klan activity. And in Colorado, the Klan was particularly strong in Denver, Grand Junction, and Boulder County. In fact, Boulder was the site of the third Klan group, called a Clavern, in the state. Many Boulder County residents endorsed an ideology that considered anyone not Protestant and Anglo-Saxon un-American. As you can see here in the page from the first edition of the Rocky Mountain American, that local Klan paper, the KKK in Boulder County was unabashedly white supremacist. Klan-run newspapers are not the only written sources we have from the time. Regional newspapers, in particular the Longmont Daily Times and Lafayette Leader, paint a picture of visible Klan activity in Boulder County. We do not, however, have very many surviving editions of the Louisville Times from the time the Klan was active in our area. As such, newspaper information on the Klan in Boulder County is mostly limited to Klan activity in the towns surrounding Louisville. From these papers, we know that regional Klan members held parades in Boulder, Longmont, Lafayette, and Louisville. We know that hooded Klansmen interrupted regional church services to publicly donate to Protestant denominations. We know that hundreds of Boulder County residents flocked to hear national, regional, and local Klan leaders speak in city auditoriums, union halls, and other venues. And we know that in eerily cheerful events masking the larger racist and anti-immigrant agendas of the Klan, residents gathered at events like Klan picnics to celebrate 100% Americanism. Not all events were as outwardly benign. As the Klan seized control or consolidated influence in regional city governments, acts of intimidation increased. Louisville was a frequent target of the Klan because of its large Italian Catholic population. As the Rocky Mountain American decried, the Klan viewed Louisville as a cesspool of immorality sorely in need of cleaning up. The Klan solution? Get rid of anyone it didn't consider American. Now, that is not to say that Louisville's Klan activity was only perpetuated by outsiders. There were residents of the town who joined or sympathized with the Klan. In Louisville, outsiders and residents donned white robes to march, burn crosses, and terrorize those they did not believe should be allowed to make life here. Listen to several city residents recall the parades and cross burnings in Louisville and what it felt like to see these acts of aggression occurring on our streets. Consider why they felt the way they did and what their reactions reveal about Louisville during this period.
All they did was Had a big parade here one night, and they burned crosses on 4 different intersections here.
About how many people belong to this organization?
You mean from Louisville?
Oh, there's lots of them.
A lot of them. You didn't know, see, because we're all loaded.
I know they were good, but how many people were in the organization? The parade down the street?
Oh, heck, I don't know. There must
Must have been about
a couple hundred, wasn't there?
Couple hundred?
And they were all from Louisville?
Oh, no.
No, they come from the different
From all over.
Lafayette.
There were several
Some
people from
Louisville,
yeah,
yes.
Here, but I can remember 3 or 4 crosses was burnt in a few of these houses around here. Such as I think they burnt one down in Teely Bottinelli's one time. And they lit a couple here on Main Street.
One evening we had moved up to our home at 1000 Grand Avenue, and I think Vernon was 5 years old. And I heard so much commotion, and I looked out the window and I saw all these men walking down the street in their white gowns and torches. And of course, we always felt we knew who some of the members of the Ku Klux Klan were. But I remember that.
What year was that?
Let's see, Vernon was born in 1922. I think it was, I may be wrong on this date, but it was between 1927 and 1930.
What did they do?
I don't know what they did. I never was very much interested in the Ku Klux Klan.
You just saw them marching?
That's all.
Yeah, I was 29 when I and George was married, and it was he was married in 24, so they were active in 23, 24.
And they tried to stop you from marrying Laura?
Yes, Dan Hodgson. I was
Why?
working in the Monarch store because he said George was Catholic. He come in the store, and I used to make the sausage and hamburger, and I was behind the counter trimming the meat, getting ready for it. And he came in and he said, Laura, he said, you better stop going with George Ellis. And I says, well, why? And he says, he's a Catholic. I said, no, he isn't. I says, he's an Orthodox. I says, his church is Orthodox church. And I said, anyhow, Dan, I said, that's what our country was founded on. I says, religious freedom. And I said, I'm not going to stop going with George. I said, no matter what the consequences.
I do remember. I know I wasn't very old, but I was scared to death. And they used to burn them up there where the old Catholic church was, up here on Lafarge. And I'd see them marching in them white robes, and I was just chilled. I can remember right now, I just get chilled. And one time, they burned a cross right near my granddad's home, where he lived up on Lafarge, on the end of Lafarge. And I wouldn't go outside or anything, I was just scared. And I never...
Now, we do not know how pervasive the Klan's influence was in Louisville, and there's reason to think that the inroads might not have been as strong because of Louisville's significant Southern and Eastern European immigrant populations as the Klan was in other cities around us. But we know that there was at least one Klan parade in town, that several crosses were burned to intimidate residents, and as several of the oral history participants recounted, that the perpetrators of these acts were not always outsiders. We also strongly suspect that the Klan intimidated what was a growing Latino population in Louisville. As one Louisville resident put it in another oral history, the Klan wanted to run Spanish-speaking families out of town and planned to do the same to Italian families after that. We've shared most of the sources the museum has on the history of the Ku Klux Klan in Louisville. At this point, we invite you to think about what these sources tell us about Louisville's past. We also encourage you to think about what sources are missing. Whose voices have you not heard, and how does their silence impact the story that we can tell? These are the questions we as a community need to consider as we work towards a more equitable Louisville. Thank you.